I'm Tobias Revel.
And I'm Radha Mystery.
And this is Futur-ish, a podcast about how nothing is new and everything has happened before.
We've been working and playing in futures for over a decade of hype and bluster amidst increasing uncertainty and complexity.
In each episode, we explore a recent event or signal for its historical context and speculate on future possibilities.
And make it make sense for people like you and me.
I've sorted out my lighting finally after 15 episodes or whatever it's been.
Were you jealous of my lighting? It is a bit dark, I'm not going to lie.
A bit too dark.
You seem like a bit of a floating head because of the black against.
That's sort of the effect I wanted, but maybe not to this extreme.
Okay, quite ghoulish.
Well, that's actually just what I look like, so it's fair enough, isn't it? Ghoulish Englishman.
Oh, dear God.
Well, before you begin, we have updates. I like this as a thematic thing, that we come back to things we've talked about before. Like, that's a good thing to do, isn't it? It's good practice.
Love.
So you may be aware that your country decided to kidnap the leader of another country a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
The US government, or the US, administration, I don't know what we're saying. The US government because the government weren't really involved, were they? They were told that no one was going to take Maduro, and then they did. So let's say that the US administration,
the executive function of the administration, I would suggest, is the most
the executive
accurate
function of the US administration organized the capture of Nicolas Maduro from Venezuela at the beginning of the year. And of course, it was on Polymarket, wasn't it? Similar to our previous coverage of Polymarket the taking of a small town in Ukraine. Someone made $436,000. Am I saying that right? $3,600,000, yeah. Betting that Maduro will be captured by the end of January.
$436,000. $436,000.
That took us a long time to figure out.
We promise we're like smart sometimes.
I tell you what, that exposes how often we are faced with numbers that large in our daily life, isn't it? We just actually don't know how to pronounce it.
The life of a consultant, my friend.
So interestingly, the chance that Nicolas Maduro would be captured by the end of January on the 2nd of January was 6.5%, but it spiked to 11% on the 3rd of January, which many commentators have said suggests insider information or insider trading, which of course on Polymarket and these prediction markets isn't actually technically illegal at the moment.
Yeah.
In addition to this, so that was the payout of the capture of Nicolas Maduro. There was $10.5 million riding on the US invading Venezuela. Although it was marked as resolved, Polymarket actually declined, and they said that the capturing of Maduro did not count as invasion of Venezuela, so they declined to pay out the $10.5 million that was hanging around in that bet. So Polymarket's still rolling strong. I mean, I know we've both seen quite a few items about it recently as well. It seems to be coming round this prediction market thing. So, if you want to get more of that type of insightful, cutting-edge intel, you can like and subscribe, and you can follow this podcast.
Well, I'm here to talk about another system that kind of sucks, which is maybe in a roundabout way, something that I feel like is a signal of what's happening to healthcare and perhaps the kind of distrust that citizens have in our healthcare systems. And I don't think that is necessarily unique to the United States. I was talking to somebody the other day who is a policy advisor for the Ministry of Health in Canada. And one of the things that they had shared was this stat that if somebody needs like an MRI, if they go to their GP and the GP, the primary care physician says like, hey, I need to refer you for an MRI, that appointment could be 8 months down the line because of availability. And that's in Canada. I think the US also has our own crippling healthcare infrastructure. We are dealing with some pretty ratchet healthcare policy right now in this country. And I mean, I don't know. How is it going over there across the pond, Tobias?
The same sort of problems, really. Not as complicated by the intrigues of private healthcare, because we have public healthcare, obviously.
By no means is it a simple thing. And I think in some of these signals that I wanted to talk about today, we'll see that. There's a few different angles I'm coming at this with, and then I'd love to take a trip down memory lane with you. But the first one is I came across this biopatch. Biopatches are back, baby. This biopatch called Sense, and it was created by this woman named Roxana Chicas in collaboration with Georgia Tech. And she is an immigrant. She's a daughter of immigrants. And a lot of people in her family are farm workers and construction workers. And one of the key data points that really felt compelling to her, that kind of drove a lot of this research for her, was the fact that farm workers are 35 times more at risk for heat-related death, and construction workers are 13 times more likely. So this thing that she has created, it's called the Sense, SENSE biopatch. It's a device that uses sensors to monitor multiple physiological signs at once. So that includes skin temperature, hydration, heart rate, physical activity, blood oxygen levels. And it's essentially a little patch that kind of you can stick on your chest. And I use inches.
Size
and
of a
use
matchbox.
centimeters. About the size of a matchbox is a pretty accurate reading. The size of a matchbox for people who still know what that is. And it's something that integrates these multiple data streams, and in Chica's words, provides a comprehensive view of how heat exposure affects the body. So what she's really trying to do is to use AI algorithms that analyze those signals in real time and enable a real-time alert or intervention to the wearer. And there was a line in this interview that she did with Reuters, actually, that really stuck with me, which was what she's really trying to get ahead of with prevention is so that these folks don't have to go and become patients in a hospital somewhere, that you don't have to call the hospital, you don't have to call an ambulance, they don't have to show up. Now, there's obviously a few different angles within that itself. There's the fact that a lot of farm workers and construction workers in this country are undocumented. And so that poses kind of its own complications. But the other part of it is maybe a failure of the healthcare system in these times to respond in a manner that is quick, efficient, productive, whatever.
I mean, just to dig into this a bit. So
yeah.
I've seen something similar speculatively proposed before for workers in the Middle East. And my queries with that are sort of similar here, which is essentially they may get a warning saying it's too hot, take a break. And I note from the device that basically the warning is on the device, so it's not like sent to their phone as an LED on the device that lights up. But that relies on a work culture that allows them 100%. To say, it's time for me to take a break. Whereas I'd assume, well, maybe it's a false assumption, but for many of these folks, they won't have that sort of freedom of choice potentially over what they can do.
And so this is where we have the technology provides a solution, but the surrounding social infrastructure around that technology to enable its actual use doesn't necessarily feel like it's there yet, right? They've done this study on 170 participants who are full-time farm workers. And so, of course, in those studies, I imagine that there has been some consent given from the supervisors to say, like, yes, we want them to take a break. We want to be able to allow them to not suffer from heat exhaustion. But I would also imagine that perhaps there's a little bit of a argument for the liability issue here. So it's you'd rather have your people take a break than have somebody pass out, or worse, have someone die on your property on your watch. One of the other things that I happened upon at the same time was another wearable. And I'll say this, like, I'm not super psyched about wearables, but I think the path that this has taken me down was really interesting to me.
Why aren't you psyched about wearables? Tell me why you're not psyched about wearables.
So here's what it is. I think I am mildly jaded because how many hype cycles have we now experienced around wearables? You and I have been doing futures research for like around at least 15 years at this point, if not longer. And we've been through the first iteration of Google Glass. We've been through the contact lenses. We've been through the watches. We've been through the quantified self movement. We've been through all of these things that have promised to deliver. And I don't know, maybe, by the end of this episode, I'll be convinced otherwise. So there's this design studio called Insects. It's spelled INXECTS. Super duper cool. And they've developed a wearable that translates environmental stress signals into these physical sensations, essentially these vibrations as haptic feedback. It's called the Gaia Communication System, GCS, and it incorporates a sensor-laced vest and these wrist sleeves. Now, I would call this a speculative project. That's what it looks like to me.
Just describe it to folks who may be listening on their travel. The vest looks a little bit like some sort of, utility tactical vest. It's got loads of straps and Velcro bits and pockets and things on it. But I suppose the standout thing is the glowing colored disc in the center of the chest, which looks like something a little bit from a sort of B-rate sci-fi movie or something like that.
And then there's these wristbands as well that maybe come up to like the middle of your forearm that are laced up as well. So this vests, in combination with the wrist sleeves, are meant to gather data about the health of plants, soil, air, and ecosystems before translating these readings into haptic feedback in the form of vibrations. One of the use cases that was brought about by Insects, the studio, was think of an architect who's walking a site. And you're walking this site, and I guess in this situation, it's virgin land. It's never been built on before. There's trees and flora and fauna and everything, you name it, they've got it. As you walk through this site with this GCS on you, you're gathering this passive data about what the state and the health condition of the environment is. So the idea being that, like, if the health of the environmental conditions around you are poor, I don't know, perhaps those vibrations would be more intense. If they're healthier, they would be more subtle. And so what if technology could help us have a deeper understanding of the true impact we're having on the environment in a tangible sense? One of the key audiences that Insects is trying to target with this is architects who are really building things that could impact the planet, right? And so what would it mean if, when you are thinking about the construction of a new build, you're also understanding the impact that you're having on the natural environment?
Can I ask, though, why a wearable?
Well, that's the question. I don't know. And I think this is why I sometimes have a little bit of a critique of wearables in general, because I don't think everything needs to be a freaking wearable. I do think this kind of access to data is important. And I do think there is something about feeling the impacts in an emotional way in our bodies that is compelling. So do you remember Neil Harbison?
Yeah, color sensor on his head. Is that right?
Yes.
That was my entire description.
Okay, so Neil Harbison, I came across him when in the early 2010s. He's someone who advocated to be recognized legally as a cyborg. He is the first officially recognized cyborg by the reputable Guinness World Records.
That's very reputable. Don't slag off the Guinness World Records.
Don't slag off.
It's one of our last great institutions.
You're such a traditionalist. I didn't think that you would go down for the for institutions.
I'd lay down my life
for the Guinness World Records.
I'm gonna stand up for you. Believe
you have more to live for, Tobias. There's more out there.
Stand where I stand.
Okay, so he's the first officially recognized cyborg by Guinness World Records. He's also the co-founder of this thing called the Cyborg Foundation that he runs with his partner, Moon Rebus. One of the main objectives of the foundation is to bring cyborg culture to more people who are interested in it and to help folks understand how to widen their senses and human capabilities by applying what they call these cybernetic extensions in the human body. Now, the reason that he went down this path towards becoming what he refers to as a cyborg is that he was diagnosed with achromatopsia, which is a condition that leaves him seeing the world purely in black and white. So like everything is grayscale for him. And so he opted for this unconventional solution, which was to have doctors implant an antenna into his skull. And it sits at the top of his skull and then protrudes out to just in front of his forehead. The antenna works by converting color into these distinct auditory tones. So for example, red, which is at the bottom of the visual spectrum, has the lowest frequency when he hears it. And then violet, which is at the top of the visual spectrum, has the highest frequency. He was kind of everywhere you looked in the early 2010, 2012, 2013, 2015. He was giving interviews all over the place.
I mean, I guess for folks who maybe weren't there at that time, there was a period in the early 2010s of sort of quite optimistic hacker tech culture around, and there was Kevin Kelly doing his thing and Chris Anderson. You had these massive nerds who had quite a platform, were doing quite radical experimentations, and it was a bit silly, but it was also quite exciting because it wasn't all profit oriented and locked down and corporate as it is now.
You also have to remember the landscape at the time was like CRISPR had just come out in 2012, 2013. So speaking of hacking, there was a lot happening in that space of people wanting to explore what augmenting their bodies would look like, how they could expand the reach of their human capabilities. So there's Moon Rebus, who is the partner of Neil Harbison. And one of the things that she had done was this performance art piece called Waiting for Earthquakes. And as somebody who was also interested in cyborg culture, she developed a sensor that vibrates whenever there's an earthquake in the planet. The sensor was permanently implanted in her feet in March of 2013, and it vibrates in different levels depending on the intensity of the earthquakes that it's recording, and it's wirelessly connected to online seismographs. And she does this solo dance performance where she stands still until an earthquake is felt. So during that performance time, if there are no earthquakes, she doesn't move.
I like that. I
Me
like
too.
that a lot. I like that more
Yeah.
than, no offense to Neil, but I think that there's something very beautiful about that.
I think so too. And that was one of the first instances where I really started to become interested in this idea of what happens if we are more in conversation with the natural environment around us. What does that start to mean for how we feel about the planet and our place in that? And the other project that this reminds me of, which is definitely a tangent, and I wasn't expecting to go there, was our friends at Superflux who did this recent project called Nobody Told Me Rivers Dream. Have you seen this one, Tobias Ravel?
Yes. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Can you share a little bit more about this?
No, I can't because I haven't looked at it because that's just, it's one of those things where I saw it everywhere. And I don't have that kind of relationship with Anab and John. We don't actually talk about work. We just gossip.
I love that.
So I don't actually know what they actually do.
I love that. All right, fine. You've let me down once again, but it's okay. So the short of it is it's a project that leverages AI to translate what the river might be saying. And so at a very high level, it's about what they're calling the ability to relearn the deeper languages of ecological intelligence and explore its role in our ongoing relationship with the living world. So anyways, I have loved that project by Moon Rebus for ages, really because of what it demonstrates for the potential relationship we can have as a citizen of planet Earth. But again, going down this freaking rabbit hole, because that's how my brain works, is you had mentioned this biohackers movement that emerged in the early 2010s. CRISPR was on the horizon at that time, 2012, 2013. And there was this big movement around the quantified self and people tracking all of their data, but it was pre Apple Watch and things like that, right? So I remember very oddly with my crappy ass memory, I remember this article from 2017 in Vice of all places. And it was this collection of images that had been taken by this Berlin-based photographer named, is it Hans Wiedemann? I really hope I pronounced that correctly.
Hannes Wiedemann.
Hannes Wiedemann.
Well, this is Trump's America, isn't it?
Please don't say that. I am not one of those people.
So we don't care about Europe.
I'm a child of immigrants. So this collection of images was taken in 2015, and he captured across the United States from East Coast to West Coast and went into these biohacker operating rooms, which were basically these labs that were converted from basements and garages. And he documented these biohackers who were implanting RFID chips and magnets and LED pucks under their skin, sometimes to do really interesting things, and sometimes because they thought it was like really cool to be able to have a light glowing out of your forearm. The thing that was really interesting to me is in this article, they said that there tends to be an end goal to all of this experimentation, that these, what they call grinders, strive to be cyborgs. And in fact, many insist that they already are. And in the end, they want to weave flesh and tech into a tapestry in order to unify humans and machines, quote unquote. So one of the lines that really stuck out to me felt quite prophetic, honestly, in 2017, which was, though some of these aims seem far-fetched, they'll nonetheless influence the next generation of medical devices. And the final piece that this led me to, and this is why I really started to question, like, is this the end of healthcare as we know it? I found this white paper that was
Sorry,
published.
can I just say there's the name of a bacteria further down your notes that you highlighted, and I'm really looking forward to you reading it.
No, I'm not going to.
I think it's about 5 minutes away. There's lots of them in a row.
But anyway, so I was thinking a little bit about that line about, while some of these aims seem far-fetched, they'll influence the next generation of medical devices. And I found this white paper from 2025, and it's titled "A 3-in-1 Wearable and Implantable Biopatch for Integrated In-Body Energy Harvesting, Sensing, and Self-Powered Diabetic Wound Treatments." Did you get that? Does that make sense?
No.
So the premise of this is that as technologies continue to evolve and become more seamlessly integrated with the human body, they hold the promise of transforming the future of medicine and empowering individuals to take a more active role in their own well-being. what they have devised is this multifunctional biopatch. It's called M-BioP. So it's capable of harvesting energy from body and organ movements. So it doesn't need like a battery or something. It doesn't need to be implanted. And it has both the ability to accelerate the healing of diabetic wounds that are infected with bacteria, but it also has antibacterial effects on things like E. coli and staph infections.
Otherwise known by their Latin names.
As Go ahead.
It's not my episode.
But you are a supporting character here, my friend.
I'll give it a go. Escherichia coli, Escherichia coli, E. coli to you and me.
Yes.
And staph infection is, well, that's just Staphylococcus aureus.
Staphylococcus. You turned it into a dinosaurus.
Staphylococcus aureus.
We just invented a new dinosaur. Staphylococcus. Staphylococcus aureus.
Staphylococcus aureus. Yeah, exactly. Just like I said it. And then Pseudomonas aeruginosa.
I wasn't even going to try that one. It's not highlighted, as you can see in the notes.
The copy paste from Science Direct for you, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly, man. So anyway, so the point being here is like what the authors of this paper have said is that this represents the first instance of an implanted patch for antibacterial therapy, as well as in-body energy harvesting that doesn't require batteries or electrical circuits or things like that, that prevents kind of new opportunities for future medical innovations.
Yeah, so it's piezoelectric. So it's the movement of it that stimulates an electrical current, and it looks a little bit like a plaster patch or something, really.
Exactly.
A Band-Aid.
There's maybe like two paths here. One is talking about the relationship that we can begin to have with the natural environment around us and like how we might start to be in conversation with the planet and decenter ourselves as like human beings. And then the other part of it is, what is this signaling for maybe a continued distrust in our healthcare system and the inability maybe for like healthcare as a system to really address the ongoing and potentially new challenges that come about with things like an aging population, with uninsured citizens, with new diseases that come on the horizon and things like that might be kind of more preventable or stuff like that. So I don't know. What do you make of this, Tobias?
Yeah, I mean, it brings out some tensions that, regardless of the biohacking nature of it, are very real. Again, we mentioned at the very beginning the idea of the aging population putting more and more pressure on the healthcare system, the intersection of the natural world and the human-made world that led to outbreaks like COVID. This is a continuum of stuff. We've seen things like molecular robots for doing microsurgeries inside bodies. We've seen the first beginnings of robotic surgeries as well.
Yeah.
I think the biohacking thing is very interesting because I certainly would say there's been a trend in the last few years of, through whatever the current iteration of the quantified self is, paired with various kind of nutrition podcasts and things like that, this whole like wellness culture is also in this sort of snort ground flax seeds before you go to bed and you'll get 10 years younger overnight or something, whatever the latest fad is.
Yeah.
There's this competitive, highly quantified wellness culture, which we've already seen through people using like diabetes, blood sugar monitors to lose weight, and Ozempic, et cetera, all these things that are being used in the pursuit of this idealized wellness that's then tracked through various quantified measures. And is in the same way that the Apple Watch turned out to be the Internet of Things, that is what biohacking turned out to be, in consumer culture.
Yeah.
Is it the end of healthcare? I mean, probably not.
No, of course not. Hyperbolic in that, but...
No, I know. And you're entitled to be, because this is a podcast, but, it doesn't cure the underlying fact that people are going to have heart disease and things like that,
It definitely doesn't, but if more and more people take their own healthcare into their own hands, what are the ripple effects of that? And if technology is on the horizon to enable that behavior, then what will we begin to see? Does it actually mean we move away from this overarching kind of healthcare system and move back to the model of the neighborhood family practitioner or the community family practitioner, the house visit, things like that? And the house visit could be something that is part of a digital community or something that's virtual. But to me, this does mark a shift, at least, in the way people are starting to think about what healthcare looks like for them in their daily lives.
Yeah. And Anthony Enns wrote a thing a few years ago, which I refer to a lot, called apocryphal psychotechnologies. And he basically did a kind of history of brain reading technology, or alleged brain reading technology, in the different ways over like 200-300 years. People had thought about what brain reading technology was, from like a cap that goes in your head to like an implant, whatever it was, and the different forms this had taken. And the point of it wasn't to talk about brain reading technology, but how the different forms of how it was represented in both science and fiction were representative of the anxieties people had about technology and health at the time in different ways, whether it was to do with implants and miniaturization, whether it was to do with control, etc., etc. And there is something here about, if we read both these scientific advances and these pop cultural advances, and maybe that's why Mr. Harbison's coming back into the popular consciousness, which is indicating a distrust of mainstream scientific consensus and the ability of the healthcare system to respond in a timely manner, and is also clawing onto some desperate need to preserve. Because I'll say an interesting thing, as opposed to the biohacking culture of the early 2010s, a lot of this is about preserving or going back to an ideal rather than forward to like a new evolution of humanity, which is what all those 2010s guys, and they were mostly guys, were about. You know, other than Moon Rebus. They were mostly about, we're going to be cyborg, we're going to be faster, we're going to be smarter, we're going to have all these modifications, you know, we're going to have RFID tags in our arms, you know, we're going to have USB sticks in our bums, all of that stuff. And these ones are like, I just want to be young forever, I don't want to die, and everything's scary. This is a different driver.
It's a different generation.
It's probably the same generation, don't you think? I mean, who's the chap who takes his son's blood?
God. I know who you're talking about. The guy that's trying to live forever.
Brian Johnson, yeah.
Brian Johnson.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably a reason he's in the press so often, which is he probably represents something about the ideal of what a lot of, I'm assuming men largely in his case, want to do, which is to be young forever.
Yeah, but the Fountain of Youth thing is not a new story. I mean, that story is thousands of years old. What is our podcast about again? Nothing is new.
Truly. Nothing is new. And everything has happened before.
All right, sir. I have to go and do more serious work now.
All right. Don't be too serious, though, because it's a serious world out there. And
it is scary. A serious world. It is a serious, scary world out there.
Have fun with the fun stuff. All right.
Toodles. All right, friend. Toodles. Bye.